Welcome to the Why on Earth Community Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron William Perry, and today we're visiting with the founder of Liquid Trainer, Ron Lemire. Hey, Ron.
Hey, Aaron. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, I am too. Really excited. We got a lot to share with folks. Ron is a graduate of Maine Maritime Academy and became a marine engineer. He worked out at sea for a few years following and worked for oil companies on tankers, mud boats, and seismograph boats covering all aspects of oil development, from searching for oil fields to drilling for oil by delivering mud to the rigs and transporting oil on tankers. Sometimes he didn't see land for 6 months. After becoming disenchanted with the oil industry, he wanted a change and drove to Boulder, Colorado. While heading west, as the Rocky Mountains appeared in the distance, John Denver's famous song, Rocky Mountain High, was playing on the radio. After years of deep study in Rolfing, Moshe Feldenkrais, science of centering, and body-centered psychotherapy, Ron received an invitation to Aspen to provide a healing session to an anonymous client, whom he found out was John Denver. This set his life on a new trajectory, including spending most of the 1980s traveling with John Denver. Never returning to the sea to work, but deepening in his commitment to body healing, Ron would incorporate his experience and body-centric knowledge into developing the Liquid Trainer, which we are excited to share with you today. Ron, it's really a joy to have this opportunity to visit with you. And we've, of course, had a handful of wonderful conversations these past several months. And what I'm excited about with this particular episode is that we're going to be offering a really cool training, health, and wellness fitness device to folks to get at a discount. But we're also going to have an opportunity to kind of peek into the last several decades of history here in the Boulder, Colorado, Aspen area, and some of the things that have unfolded in that really magical period of time. So, Ron, I thought I would just kick it right off by asking you, what was that like coming from the east, driving west, and seeing those mountains start to grow little by little as you're listening to John Denver's music?
Oh, I was entering a new threshold. And it's really an interesting time because it was in the early 70s. So I just wanted to see the Rocky Mountains, like the physical aspects of them, I didn't think of anything else. And then when we rolled into Boulder, it was like going through a curtain of time. It was a renaissance. There was so much aliveness and consciousness that it was baffling. It was totally baffling. It shattered all the logic that I was carrying around for quite some time. Now, at the time in the early 70s, there was you could say an invasion from the east, and the west was standing on its own ground. So we had like Ayurvedic medicine, we had yoga, meditation, we had Chinese medicine, Japanese macrobiotics, we had yoga, martial arts, and all the different modalities that were here in Boulder already, which was where Ida Rolf was beginning her guild, Honora Wolf was beginning the massage school, and there was, from Tibet, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche came through and opened up Buddhism to all of us here. And then there was Rajneesh with all his ancient orange people running around in their robes, orange robes, and you had Yogi Bhajan, people wearing white turbans and white and carrying daggers. It's a very colorful time. Now, because of my engineering background, somehow I got involved in looking at structure in the human body. I had a teacher named Dr. Binder who helped me basically shift my understanding of my health. He was an acupuncturist, or he is an acupuncturist, a homeopath, a chiropractor, naturopath, and basically I saw him regularly and was guided to learn lots of different things. And one of the things that he taught me was a thing called position technique, which is the science of centering. And it was applying suspension mechanics to the human frame. And because I thought a lot logically about how a ship is, kept in balance by ballasting with midline of the tanker or whatever. and the structures of the ship and how it stays together, it was, to me, studying anatomy and physiology in the interest of learning position technique was just downloading. It was just, who created what, right? The human body or the ship? We came first, but everything that we've ever seen in systems like that, I began to see in systems in ourselves, in how the cellular body works. So I really was interested in understanding structure. And that was my approach to health and vitality. And from there, it started making sense as to how important core was, and more movement modalities like yoga, martial arts, and things like that over the years.
That's great. Yeah, and we're going to have an opportunity to chat a bit about not only some of your experiences on land, but also at sea. And apparently there was a great story you have to share with Jacques Cousteau. And I want to, before getting to that, I want to ask you, what was it like, those times when you were working at sea for so many months like that and not seeing land?
Very Neptunian.
Yeah. Expand.
The way that I worked on that particular boat, it was a seismograph boat where we had these cables going out, dragging, and they would sense the bottom and tell where there's oil in us. So our shifts were 12 hours on, 12 hours off. In a lot of my off time, I had a library with me, and that's all I did was study. And I would meditate a lot. And I remember one time just meditating on the open sea, all of a sudden we ran into a sea of flying fish. And they just came on deck, and I had to kind of bail them back out, A lot of bizarre things happen when you don't see land for 6 months.
I bet, yeah.
But interesting thing also is you learn about ground reaction force. And that's the opposite reaction that you have when you step. Gravity comes and gives you an opposite reaction. Now, when you're on a boat, you have to be very grounded. You can't walk above your center. You have to be totally grounded into your center. So if you're at the bow and the boat is listing, starboard and port, whenever the starboard side comes up, you push away from it, shifts your weight to the left side, and then you push away. You have to be stuck to the deck. And you have to go with the rhythm of how the deck moves. And in order to do that without getting seasick or any of that, is you have to think from the ground up. And that's called ground reaction force. And that understanding, maybe in the 6 months of being out to sea, was totally in my cells to understand how we walk on the earth. Because you never think about ground reaction force on the ground, but I can help you relate to ground reaction force if you're on a boat. Mm-hmm. Right?
So interesting. And here we are, our feet, firmly planted on the ground. And part of your technology, of course, the core of it is that you're working with water, with liquid, as you're moving it around. And I thought maybe, do you mind holding up the liquid trainer just so we can show folks? And at the end of the episode, Ron's going to actually demonstrate how to use this. And I got one a few weeks back, and it's been so fun to think that, whether we're living in an apartment in the middle of a city or in the suburbs somewhere or out in a rural setting, this trainer should be very easy for us to utilize in just about any environment or circumstance. And it gets a full body flow going in a way that a lot of the other exercise equipment doesn't seem to.
It does. At first, in the first lessons, you learn ground reaction force and relative to where the water is in the bag. So what you want to do with the liquid trainer is learn how to send the water from one end to the next. And then it happens in all planes of movement. What you do to one side, you have to do equally to the other. And because you have this little extra 2-pound weight, it tends to want to just pull the tendons enough to say, I want to go further. Then first thing you know, this simple movement becomes very fluid. You start to let go, your fascial tissue starts to unwind, and the first thing you know, your posture is straighter. because the erector spinae muscles are equally used in a circular way. Very incredible bonus. You only have to do this for about a week or so and you're going to be walking differently.
Yeah, it's so great. It's so exciting. And we're really excited to announce also that Liquid Trainer is now part of our regenerative economic ecosystem, which means that with the code Y on Earth, when you go to liquidtrainer.com, you'll get a 20% discount on your purchase, and a portion of the proceeds will be donated to the Y on Earth community to support our podcast episodes and our community mobilization work going forward. So it's a real win-win-win, Ron, and we're really excited about the relationship and sort of bringing in the new year 2021 with this in mind and inviting folks to make Liquid Trainer a part of their health and wellness routine.
Should be a lot of fun. And if you think about it, we are cells of the planet. The planet is 70% water. We're 70% water. The planet turns in a counterclockwise direction, and our dominant side is counterclockwise, being right-handed. And so when you do a movement, whenever you'll take this, you could look at it because it's sort of like a flexible plastic, right? This is a special polyurethane, and it has an incredible strength, durability. You'll never, ever really, through movement, ever puncture it. You'll puncture it through putting it on the wrong... Can I change this?
Poking it, yeah, or whatever.
If you poke it, or bad ground, or stalactite ceilings in hotels, those are the kind of things. But just on your own, if you had the free movement to toss this water around, you will not ever break this. It's got such great durability. Now you think about it, it's just like your skin. So if you take care of your skin the same way, if you take care of the bag the same way you take care of your skin, it could last you, decades.
A lifetime, huh?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's how you take care of it the same way. Because it's like your skin as well, you could say this is like our new Aquarian technology of adding an appendage to bring you back into balance, because whenever you do a movement from right to left or left to right, in any plane of motion, you're basically optimizing ranges of motion that you never knew you had, so it restores a lot of the early movements you lost through your education. This brings you right back into a real sense of balance. You'll know where your core is, you'll know how you stand erect-wise, and you'll feel more suspended. So this is why I stuck with this thing. When we were living here in Boulder, Chris and I, we had Leia was around 11 or 12, something like that. She was at Shining Mountain, And I, at the time, had enough bags to teach people. And she says, Dad, maybe you could help, class. You can teach the class. So I got this Waldorf class. And they were like between 7th, 8th, and 9th grades. And so at first, two of the young boys, probably around 10 years old, were like, they had this kind of posture,
Yeah.
And you see that a lot, right? It's like the bones are growing faster than the muscles, so they're like tight, right?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's interesting. We'll see what happens here, Because at the time, I was just using the bag to rehab shoulders, because they did such an incredible thing with shoulders. And so it didn't connect yet. I still had 7 years into, cultivating movements and working with the inventor and different teachers that were around. And we had 3 classes per week, and then we did that for 3 weeks, and then we had Christmas break. So I taught them all the movements. Think about these kids at that age, is that you can't just show them 1 or 2 movements. They're movement junkies. You have to feed them keep their attention, their interest, the whole thing. So 2 weeks goes by, Christmas, they come back, we have another class. And all of a sudden, these 2 young boys that I saw that were like this, all of a sudden were like this.
Yeah.
And I'm going, holy smokes, what happened here? So I was curious as to what therapist they went to see.
Yeah.
Because I've worked on a lot of kids like that, and changing the structure that dramatically is not done in Rolfing, it's not done in Feldenkrais, it's not done in any of these. These are real serious structural, almost adhesions, because the muscles are so tied in. So they said, no, we didn't see any therapists. I said, what do you mean? Didn't have anybody work on you? No. I said, what did you do? Well, we got a lot of movements to show you. We've been working at these movements like hours every day.
Yeah.
And we've got like 3 or 4 that I'm sure you've never seen before.
Cool.
And so it was the bag. That's when it totally got it, saying, holy smokes, if it can do this to this,
Yeah.
what can it do to that generation who learns how to do this?
Yeah.
And by the time, when they get into sports, they're going to have a basic facility, a reflex that they could never have just doing how athletes train today.
Yeah, and it creates a real advantage. And I know that you did some training with the Indiana Pacers, the professional basketball team. And I noticed, whether it's kids, growing up and getting excited about athletics and having an edge, excelling in athletics, or for a lot of us in our adult years, I myself am at a computer a lot, writing and communicating with folks. So my shoulders and back, certainly
Aaron,
get affected by that.
It's basically this. It's for kids of all ages
Yeah.
and all walks of life.
Love it.
So no one ever addresses a musician, for example, about how to work out to become a musician.
Sure,
right?
sure.
You get the instruments, you're doing scales all the time, and your nervous system is finally tapped in, and you can do all this. But unfortunately, if you don't do anything for the body, what happens is you adapt to the instrument that you're playing.
Right.
Right. And this is more. This is a veteran piano player's posture right here. After they've,
I've got a dentist friend who's quite young, and she's already getting back issues from leaning over like this all the time, working on people's
When
teeth.
you do that and you have a focus, it kind of like creates a form. It creates a fascial form for it, and it hardens.
Yeah.
Anyhow, this particular device is. I've had like musicians come back and tell me, I don't know what this is, but I'm writing different kind of songs and I'm playing differently.
Wow, so
I'm
cool.
Like, oh, cool.
So cool. I'm excited we're able to share this with our Y on Earth community. And I wanted to ask, what was it like working with the Indiana Pacers? I mean, these are athletes at the top of their game, pun intended.
Yeah, no, they are. They're the most fascinating athletes I've ever seen, because I've never really played basketball. And except for during gym, and so I never watched the game as to really through my eyes of movement. And so after I started developing my sense of understanding structure and how it applied in martial arts or yoga or the different kind of bodies that expressed, I noticed when I was working with the Indiana Pacers is that these guys are freaking incredible athletes.
Yeah.
They're like Rick Smith was 7 feet 4 or 5 inches tall. And so one of the problems he had is his knees were blown out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I watched Rick run down the court, and he had this like wobble, pretty much a 23.5-degree wobble like the earth,
Wow. Wow.
So he was going like that, and I said, well, that's the problem with the knees right there, because that's where it's impacting. Yeah. So I worked with Rick with the liquid trainer, as well as teaching him suspension mechanics. So how to run down the court, for example, where you don't have a line, where you come into your core and you allow your core to extend. This is something that was in the Don Juan books with Carlos Castaneda, The Power of the Gate.
Those are powerful books.
Well, he learned it, and when it came to the playoffs, I noticed he didn't have any knee pads, and he no longer had the wobble. So I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So working with these particular athletes, their natural instinct is so developed. It's like at the eye. They have to do everything equally left, equally right. Yeah. I mean, a layup has to be done equally both ways, or the pace scale goes right down, Yep. And so what I find in watching that sport is they have to start real fast, stop, turn, jump up, land, hopefully not on someone else's foot so they could twist an ankle, or the other person get a broken foot, Imagine Shaq O'Neal, 300 pounds, going up on a layup and coming down on your foot.
Right.
So I didn't see one practice ever where somebody didn't draw blood. It was always like that rough. I was saying, holy smokes, I've never seen basketball from this point of view.
Yeah.
So it was really fun to teach them because they learned it very fast. Anyone that has a kinesthetic sense of development at that level learns this almost immediately, And people who still need kind of a lot of like coordination or steps to get a better coordination, it takes them a little time to learn the movements left and right equally because they rely so much on dominant side that they have to educate the left side. And once that's broken free, then all of a sudden everything starts to change. You have a left and right brain coordination and you have a left and right hemisphere coordination, and not to mention a much greater range of motion in all the joints, ankles, knees, hips. It's amazing.
It's absolutely wonderful. Well, let me just remind our audience that this is the Why on Earth Community Podcast, and today we're visiting with Ron Lemire, the founder of Liquid Trainer, and you can get a 20% discount when you go to liquidtrainer.com using the code Why on Earth. I'd like to thank our sponsors for making this episode and our podcast series possible. And this includes Earth Coast Productions, the Lidge Family Foundation, Alpine Botanicals, Purium, Earth Hero, Liquid Trainer, Vera Herbals, Growing Spaces, Soilworks, 1% for the Planet, Earth Water Press, Dr. Bronner's, and Waylay Waters. Of course, a very special thank you to all of you in our audience and in our Why on Earth Community Network who have joined our monthly giving program. If you haven't yet joined, you can go right to whyonearth.org and click on the donate button and set it up at any level that works well for you. If you'd like, you can set at the $33 or greater level and get monthly shipments of our aromatherapy CBD hemp infused soaking salts from Waylay Waters as a nice thank you. And speaking of waters and speaking of lifetimes, this time you spent with John Denver, including when you guys were aboard the Calypso with Jacques Cousteau, obviously what was a tremendous period in your life, Ron. And I've heard you share some of your stories and experiences with me, and I wanted to give our audience an idea of what that was like back during those years, spending time up at Starwood and up in the Aspen snowmass area. There was so much happening then that has really deeply influenced our sustainability movement. A lot of folks may not understand what was all those connections that were being made back in the 70s and 80s, but so much was happening that has really helped our world in a lot of different ways, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. At the time, so I met this guy, that became one of my clients here, and he lived in Aspen. And one day he calls me and says, I have a friend that could really use your work, and but he lives here in Aspen. And I said, I got a buddy that's coming up this coming weekend. We can do something then. I have never been to Aspen. I'd really like to see it. And he says, sure. So he arranged this time, and I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
So I get to my friend Scotty Halzon brought me there in his van and then dropped me off at one of his friend's house. It was the first time I was in Aspen. This was in later December, and it was minus 20 degrees out.
Wow.
Almost as cold as it is right now.
Yeah, it's a little chilly. We're sitting outside. Yeah, there's a storm blowing in. It was warmer earlier. Now it's coming from the mountains. We're feeling it.
So anyhow, I didn't have a car, and Scott that night tells my friend, asked my friend Jimmy Winger, says, Jimmy, says, you got a car you can lend Ron? We just found out he's got a treatment with John Denver tomorrow. He says, He says, I only got 2 cars in the back. He says, they're 1956 Cadillac. I got a pink Cadillac with no roof on it, but it starts. It starts every single time. And I got a white Cadillac with a roof, but I can't get it going. So you're going to have to use the pink Cadillac.
Convertible,
The convertible. I said, sure, no problem. So, but the next day I'm going up, McLean Flats up at the Starwood, and it's freaking cold.
Yeah.
I'm like, my ears like numb. And I get to the gate, and the guy says, what do you want? I said, I have an appointment with John Denver. So he calls John, and I could hear him say, John, I got a real live one outside here. Says he claims that he's got an appointment with you. What's his name? And they asked my name. I said, Ron Lemire. He said, oh yeah, send him right up. So I'm driving to finally get to the back into his driveway, and there's John. He's kind of waiting for me with his arms crossed like this. And as I stop the car, he kind of inspects the car, goes all the way around, comes back to the window, doesn't even make any mention of no top, He says, cool wheels, man, and that kind of broke the ice. And so I stayed with him for the next 3 days, 3 days, 3 nights, helped him to understand why his back was the way it was. And as he was sharing with me about his life, because I didn't really know that much about John except for hearing that sound coming in.
Yeah.
I was telling him what was going on in Boulder and about cooking, and I said, you're in desperate means if you have to stay with restaurants everywhere you go.
Right.
Right.
I
says, I remember when I was in California, I met up with the Grateful Dead's cooks, and those guys are on special diets wherever they travel. I should say on natural foods wherever they travel.
Right.
So it was a really good idea for him.
Yeah.
And he came back to me and said, my friend Tom Crum, who was his co-founder of WinStar, needs to spend more time at WinStar, and he kind of runs security. You could be on the road with him for a couple months and take over his position.
Yeah.
Because you have this fighting background, you did some boxing and stuff like that. And so we came up with some ideas, and I got a big trunk with pots and pans, like pressure cookers, woks, and had brown rice, miso, seaweeds, tamari, all kinds of different condiments to go along.
Wow.
And got a 3-burner Coleman fuel stove. And on February 21st, he calls me to fly me to Houston on February 22nd, which was my birthday. It was just coincidental. So from that time on my birthday in 1980 until throughout the 80s, I was his cook, his therapist, and his bodyguard,
so cool.
I was his head of security.
Yeah.
And wow, it just like opened another window. Boulder was one. That was a bag of tricks that I took along with me, because everybody that worked with John literally had a bag of tricks, whether they were their own musician, whether they were management, whatever. He had a good team around him.
A lot of skills.
Yeah,
interesting. And
so every day I cooked a meal, 7 or 8 course meal for about 12 people, on the 3-burner Coleman fuel stove.
That was so great.
Yeah, we were called the boat people.
The boat people? Oh, that is amazing. Yeah. That is amazing. And tell us the story. And I know we should probably get you demonstrating the liquid trainer. It'll warm us up a little too.
Yeah, it'll warm me up.
Do you want to do that first and then tell the story about Jacques Cousteau, or how would you like to do that?
Well, let me see. Maybe I could segue with a story. So I was telling Aaron. I met Aaron at our day, and we talk a lot about it.
Our day started out as Aspen Renewable Energy Day, and it has almost 20 years now of an annual conference with all kinds of innovators, leaders, scientists, folks working on climate action and soil regeneration and all manners of sustainability and wellness. So just so folks know what that is.
Yeah, that's what that is. And now it makes me segue into this other thing. There's this guy named Chip Cummins, who's the author of that.
Who's been on a podcast episode. Chip's been on an episode.
Anyhow, Chip was with Malcolm at the time that John passed away. And he was in one of the lower houses, so he and Malcolm went up to the house And Chip spent some time in John's music room. And then Chip was telling me, he says, I had all these downloads, man. It's like John was right there telling me. And Chip, see, at the time we had the WinStar Symposium. Every summer there was the Choices for the Future Symposium in Aspen. And that was done with Tom Crum and John and Buckminster Fuller and all these really avant-garde people that would do this. And they would talk about really where the state of the world is as far as the environment is concerned. And so after John passed away, there was a lag. There was nobody picked it up. Anyhow, Chip Cummins, I just want to honor him for taking the lineage from John and just continuing to do our day.
That's so great. I'll be sure to send Chip a message when this episode's published and give him a heads up.
And so, working with John, I got exposed to a lot of his concerns around the environment. I consider him to be truly one of the more powerful environmental voices. He began so many things. One of the influences that really shifted him was when he was on the Calypso with Jacques. And Jacques was one of these guys that was a co-inventor of like the aqualung, or where you could go underneath water and stay there for quite a long time with the hose, And he took a lot of pictures. So John was going out in the Calypso with Jacques, and Jacques took him down and showed him some pictures, some photos, some movies that he had done like 20 years ago. And they were like incredible underwater scenes of just, tree-like kelp fields, dulse fields. They were, seaweed was just in total rhythm in them. All these different coral reefs and fish that were, it was an incredible aquatic metropolis. It was amazing. So Jacques was saying, John, I'm going to take you now to that same place. I want to show it to you so you can see it now. And John was really excited. He had like a lot of energy around that to see such beauty. So he gets in the suit and he goes down there, and what he sees is a barren desert. It was all gone. It was just gone. And that was as shocking to John as anything was, to make him understand that we're not the proper custodians for our planet, that we need to kind of tune into some of the subtleties of how nature works, be aware of how species are disappearing. And in his music, in many of his songs, he represents the animals. He represents the whales, the dolphins. He represents all of that. He voices it through. And it's really powerful. And if you don't know that yet, listen. Pick up some John Denver music. One of the albums that I felt was really very environmentally centered was also when he did an album with Rita and the Wailers. And they did a reggae song called World Game. So when you hear that,
it's called what?
World Game.
World Game. Yeah. All right.
And that was an incredible message. I want to play in the world game. I want to make sure that everybody knows the score about using less and doing so much more. And that's just the chorus. So if you start listening to some of these words, you're going to go, wow, man, this guy was pretty hip for understanding things about the environment. So I really appreciated that. Anyhow, I got a chance to bring this thing on the road towards the end of my time with John.
It's so great. Why don't we show folks some of your moves here, and hopefully that'll warm you up a few degrees. It's definitely cooling down right now. Golly, we weren't expecting that.
Right here?
Yeah, let me just make sure it's a good frame on you there, and then we can get going with this, Ron. This is so cool. Yeah, that's perfect.
How wide do I have?
You're good.
Am I still good?
You just went out of frame right there.
A whole frame?
You're in now. You want me to scoot back a little?
Yep.
We're gonna back up just a hair. Thank you.
Ready?
Good.
Okay, so this is a liquid trainer. All you gotta do is learn how to move the water from one end to the next. You can do it very easily, or you can do a wrist movement and speed it up. Anyhow, after you learn certain movements, you'll be able to just follow the water. This is the shoulder movement that I was teaching my clients way back in the day. Anyone who would learn this particular movement, it's called the crawl in swimming, will never have arthritis. And the reason why is a lot of times when we do these movements, the capsule is contracted. When you toss the water down, it pulls your arm up. So what happens is you're kind of taking all the tension out of it, doing a full circumduction of the shoulder. And by doing this, you're repatterning that movement so that it works a lot more fluidly in the capsule. If I was going to be a baseball player and I needed something I would simulate this movement. Tossing, fastball, sidearm, fastball, fastball. If I was a golfer, I could simulate an exact swing. By doing it, I don't just do one side. I don't do my dominant side. I do it equally on both sides. What that does, it decompresses the dominant side and educates the receptive side. They interchange their dominance and receptivities. As a result, you have what you call neuroplasticity. The brain is receiving more information. And it's not just the left brain, it's the right brain. So, is it cardiovascular? Yes, I can tell you that right now. That's what I just did. In doing this, probably if you get past the first lesson, you actually can learn it. And I know that you can. If you actually learn the 8 stationary movements, you'll be able to link them all together to the point where it'll become one continuous movement. And when it becomes one continuous movement, you'll never ever want to not use this. Because a couple things, it's fun and it's quite a workout. So I'm doing this talking with you. I don't even have to think about it, I'm just doing it. Meanwhile, it's like setting a metronome and my body is grounded with ground reaction force. It pivots properly. And then meanwhile, I'm just spinning around my axis, opening up the erectus spinae. And the water wants me to go a little further each time. But that's where I have to be smart about it and just keep it within. So, there's all of these different movements. Every plane of motion in the body is used.
And Ron, how often would you recommend folks use this, week to week?
That's a great question, because we are kind of like conditioned to say, oh, we work out at so many hours a day or so many minutes a day or at this hour. This is one of these things that if you consider it to be like an appendage and you happen to do things, you take it to the office with you. If you're going to be on a computer for an hour or so, you might want to take a break and just do some movements to reorganize the tissue of the muscles and the nervous system that controls that. So you can use it anytime. I find that with the level that I work at, which is pretty much knowing the movements, if I do a workout for 15 minutes, it's like beyond anything I've ever done. And I don't know a system that can match it. If you were an athlete and you were in competition and you could simulate the movements you most adapt to, you'll use it quite often. You'll use it 5 or 6 times a day. Like a golfer, for example. Think about it. I'm not at a golf course right now, but I can simulate the movement. And because I can do that, if I do it 5 or 6 times a day, when I approach a ball with a club, it's the same movement.
Yeah.
And so there's like, you're always bringing yourself to core. You're always developing a greater core intelligence for whatever you're doing, whether it's running, swimming, any athletic sport, dance, martial arts, and in yoga. I would say if you did this before your asanas, you might find a pleasant surprise at how easy it is to do your asanas.
Oh, that's a great tip, a great insider tip of wisdom there. Let me ask, when folks buy their liquid trainer, how will they learn the different moves and forms?
When they learn it, it comes with level 1 and level 2. So you can once you tap into the website, then you go to the movements. You'll have your bag, your liquid trainer, and then you go to the movements and you'll just follow the directions there. And it's all as if I'm teaching you personally. I've worked with this thing for the last 35 years, and so whenever I teach anyone, I always teach them as if it was exactly a mirror. And that's how you'll learn these particular movements. Every movement is with me directly on, and I do it really slowly. So you can pretty much learn it, and if it's too fast, you can always press pause. Back it up a little and practice. But they're pretty simple, really. Especially if you put the time in to learn it, you'll get 10 times the reward.
This is so great, Ron, and I'm going to jump back on camera with you and just remind folks that because Ron has made Liquid Trainer a part of our Y on Earth community regenerative economic ecosystem, you get a 20% discount when you go to liquidtrainer.com. You can also connect with Ron on LinkedIn, and it's Ron-Lemire-Liquid Trainer, and we'll of course put these links in the show notes for you. And Ron, it's been such a joy chatting with you today and sharing this with our audience, and it has gotten really cold. I'm amazed by how cold it got here while we've been chatting.
Yeah.
And I guess this storm that's coming in is something. But
supposed to bring in some snow.
Yeah, we're getting some snow probably soon. I just, before we sign off for today, just wanted to invite you, Ron, if there's anything else you'd like to share with our audience or mention.
Oh, there's plenty of things to mention. We'll have to do this another time, though. If you're inclined to go forward and looking at all the sponsors that we have and all that Aaron's working with, rather, I'm very akin to loving the Cousteau Society.
Yeah.
So you can look into the Cousteau Society and learn a lot about the ocean through one of our great-grandfathers.
That's great. I'll make a note of Cousteau Society and put a link in the show notes for that as well. Well, Ron, we're really excited to be connected even more deeply with you now and to collaborating in the coming months and years. And thank you so much for sharing your Liquid Trainer with us.
My pleasure.
We'll see you later. Bye, everybody.
Take care.
The Y on Earth Community Stewardship and Sustainability podcast series is hosted by Aaron William Perry, author, thought leader, and executive consultant. The podcast and video recordings are made possible by the generous support of people like you. To sign up as a daily, weekly, or monthly supporter, please visit yonearth.org/support. Support packages start at just $1 per month. The podcast series is also sponsored by several corporate and organization sponsors. You can get discounts on their products and services using the code YONEARTH, all one word with a Y. These sponsors are listed on the whyonearth.org/support page. If you found this particular podcast episode especially insightful, informative, or inspiring, please pass it on and share it with a friend whom you think will also enjoy it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your support. And thank you for being a part of the Y on Earth community.